Hi, in this video, I'm going to talk about muscle memory and share some of the personal experiences that I've gone through in order to develop a technique. Um, and most recently, I've gone through this process when I was in my 50s, and I found to be super challenging, and one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, and it's a lifelong thing. I'm always in the process of I'm thinking about what it is that I'm doing and how to make it better. Um, but I think I'm kind of sharing this too to have a lot of empathy for people who have developed technique through the years, and then later in life, they wanted to develop um, or change what it is that they're doing, and how hard that is. And so I think for people who have developed a really solid technique early on, and where it was, where it gets to the point where, of course, when it becomes so natural and built in, that's where you want to get to. And I think it's somewhat difficult for those people to explain to someone how how to get through that process. So I'm hoping that this video helps those who are struggling with, as I do with my speech sometimes. That's something, again, that's been with me my whole life since I was a kid. There's nothing I can do about it, but hopefully through this video I'll become more fluent. Anywho, but the three steps, if you look it up in the developing muscle memory, first of all, memory exists in your brain. So this is procedural memory, where you're able to fire multiple neural paths at the same time to accomplish a movement without having to think about it. That's the key. The first step, though, is called cognitive, and cognitive means simply your head's in it. You're really having to really think about what it is that you're doing, and I'll talk about what I went through and the process, that cognitive process that I went to, and then some of the tools and techniques that I used to kind of help me get through that process. I would say one more thing here. And during the cognitive process, most people think, if you plot, a progress versus time, I think a lot of people, it's human nature to think that my progress is going to correlate linearly with time. So meaning, if I practice 1 hour, I'm going to get this much better. If I practice then 2 hours, I'm going to get this much better again. So it's kind of a linear curve. The more time I spend doing something, then the better I get. Unfortunately, with muscle memory, especially during the cognitive process, is what you'll tend. It's more like a car trying to get up an icy hill. It's a lot of fits and starts where you're just kind of bobbing down at the bottom here, not making a whole lot of progress over time. And you get a little ways up where it feels good. Then the next day when you come back and you try to do it, you feel like you're right back at square one again. So what really happens is it kind of bounces here at the bottom, and then over time, if you stick with it and practice in the right way, really focusing on that particular skill, not letting in bad habits kind of inject in that, what will happen is you'll start to gain traction. Just like a car on the hill, you'll find a spot where there's pavement, and then you start moving, and then you'll start to see this progress. And that's where it gets into step two. That's the associative phase. That's when, for me, you're really associating what I'm doing with success, and it feels good to feel like I'm finally out of this bouncing around here at the bottom where I'm not making any progress, and I get in the associative phase. And what happens to a lot of people, it's really is that you'll bounce around down here, and you just get so frustrated that you give up. In my own personal experience, learning this thing that I'm about to show you, took me probably 2 or 3, 4 years bouncing around down here before I finally gained some traction. And that's when I really, during the COVID downtime, I just focused on a year solid, just kind of working on this. And then, of course, the last phase then is when your head's out of it. That's the autonomous phase, where it's programmed in and you don't even have to think about it. For me, there's also an integration phase, where once you develop a certain movement, then you have to integrate it with your technique that exists. Okay, so those are the 3 steps. So what it is that I did in my years of playing, the movement that I was trying to develop is simply this movement right here. Where I'm able to play single note, 1 string. Okay, that's the movement that I was trying to develop. Now, what was I doing prior to that? I was using a lot of fingertips. If you look at a lot of players, there's different right hand techniques going on out there. So if you look at Tony Rice, he used a lot of fingertips, and I was doing the same thing. So the limitation of fingertips, though, is that it's speed and power. You don't get, there's a point at which your speed and power kind of top out. So when I was looking at people's right hands and models for right hands, I was looking at all the usual suspects. Brian Sutton, David Greer, and Jake Workman. So all these guys have speed and power. So if you look what Brian does, he lets his fingers dangle, and he plays more or less with a movement that looks similar to this. Okay, David Greer, he closes his fist more or less, and he references off the soft part of his thumb. I've actually asked him that. That's what he does. So many people think that he has what's called a floating right hand. He'll say, my right hand doesn't float. I'm referencing off my thumb. And I think that's important, is when you're doing, when you're learning a right hand technique and trying to learn how to play single notes like that, you're referencing somewhere. Something has to be touching the guitar. You're never just completely out in space and the only thing touching is the pick, because you need a depth gauge. You need to be able to control how much pick is going into the string. If you've got too much pick going in there, then you can't flow. It interrupts the flow of your playing. So for me, I'm referencing off the side of my thumb right here, because it's more natural for me to curl my fingers up and less natural to reference off the thumb. So what I'll tend to do is when I'm playing from rhythm, turn my hand a little bit and just kind of reference off my thumb. So that's the motion, that's the movement that I was trying to develop for the last 6 or 7 years or so. So what steps did I take? What was the first thing? Well, the first step that I did was self-awareness, and the question was, to me, how come I can't get speed and power like I want? It's not that I couldn't play things and execute. I could, but I would choose to execute things that were within my skill set and within my ability to execute. The problem is that times I would try to step out of that, and if I tried to play a fast note phrase, what I'd feel was tension, and these fingers would kind of go out like this, and I would go upside down essentially, so my pick would not point down, it would point up, and I was trying to anchor off my reference off my thumb here on the pins, and things got really tense. And I said, I don't want that. I don't want tension to be any part of my playing whatsoever, because you're teaching your body tension every time you do that. That gets programmed in. Okay, so I recognized that I wanted more of this motion, and the role model that I used was Ryan Sutton. He's got what I consider to be a very relaxed and flowing right hand, and so, but I can't put my fingers on the guitar like he does, so it's more natural for me to curl mine up. But I wanted that kind of motion, and so what I did was I just watched a lot of videos of him. And if you get a chance, he has a really great series on easy for me to say, like Artist Works, and where he talks about this, and he explains it quite well. I think the problem though that I was having was, is Brian and players like him who are just so accomplished. It's very difficult, to explain to someone like myself who's trying to go through this process exactly what I need to do. So I had to kind of figure that out on my own, and that's what I'm trying to share here in this video. Because it's not enough to just go, don't do this, do this. Okay, just don't do this or do this or do this. Do this. Okay, and so anyway, that's the motion that I wanted. Self-awareness. The self-awareness was, I'm not getting the speed and power I want, and then look for a role model and watch them, because so in this case, my role model was Brian, and then watch that. And I watched that person, watched a lot of videos of that person. And then I said, okay, let me try now. So once I've got kind of a vision in my head, let me try it. But as soon as I put the pick in my fingers and try to play the guitar, I'm right back to my old pathways, my old cognitive memory that's there. And when you're developing muscle memory, you're developing a new pathway. This pathway doesn't go away. You can't deprogram your muscle memory. All you can do is try to choose not to use it and try to make this at the more natural way of doing it. And for me, I didn't want to completely change what I was doing before. I just wanted to augment my technique with this new technique. So if I were playing rhythm, augment, and when I was getting into a single note lines, to be able to execute using this new technique. But I'll tell you how frustrating that was. It took me a solid year before I could just do this on a single string. A solid year. And that was because my right hand just did not want to listen at first. And so what I did initially is I said, okay, let me just not hold a pick. Let me not even hold the guitar. Let me just do this on my shirt or something and say, okay, that's the motion I want. And then watch that in the mirror. And then, okay, let's introduce a pick now. Oh, old pathways. Okay, well, let's not even touch the guitar. Let's push the pick up into my fingers. Well, not even pull the pick. Let's just take my fingers now and introduce it on the guitar, where I'm okay, that's the motion I want. That's what I want to get. And then do the pick without touching the guitar, and then slowly introduce the pick into the guitar towards touching a string. And this process for me, was probably at least a couple months of just not even, and there was a lot of, again, I'm at this bottom where I'm feeling no progress whatsoever, and it's always a tendency to try to go down this old pathway. Okay, but then once I got to the point where I can just go like this, and make it very light at first, don't touch it, and be aware of tension. And at first it's going to feel super awkward, but a helpful thing to do is to practice in front of a mirror, because what you're trying to do is you're not only you want to make your right hand look a certain way. While you're watching your right hand, you're reinforcing what it is you want to program. And when you get to the point where you say, I like what I see, then when you're not playing the guitar, you're replaying that tape in your head of what it looked like in the mirror. So then it's also important when you get to a point where you're feeling frustrated, is back up, walk away, because there's a lot of processing that happens in subconsciously in the back. It's the ice below the water in an iceberg. That's your subconscious is really working to help make those neural pathways. So what you're doing in this cognitive phase, you're really trying to develop this new neural pathway. And then you get to the point where you can start playing a song. I can start to feel success. That's the associative phase, and I would say there's a lot of back and forth. You don't just go, okay, once I reach cognitive, now I'm at associative, I'm at autonomous, because I think there's a synthesis or integration phase where I have to now integrate that in my existing technique. And what I found was as I would practice, I'm sitting down, and as soon as I stood up, things changed. So I had to I need to practice, I'm standing up as well. And not only that, but when I would go play a gig, as soon as I would step out and on stage or whatever, bam, right back to this old pathway. And I just have to be okay with that and say, okay, well, I guess I'm playing like this tonight. And there was one time where essentially my right hand was at a fork, where it was like, okay, do I do the old way or the new way? And it just froze. It was like a donkey. My dad used to say, you're a donkey caught between two bales of hay. I just froze, and my right hand just couldn't play. And I said, okay, I guess I'm not taking breaks tonight. I'm playing rhythm guitar the whole night. And that's what I did. And you have to be okay with that. And you have to be also okay with, I'm going to get a little worse before I'm going to get better again. And that's what happened to me. There were some things I just couldn't execute anymore or play, because I decided, I don't want to play those things and reinforce the old pathway. I only want to reinforce this new pathway. So this process for me has been multiple years, and I'm still working on it and working through it and working on getting my speed and power, to be better and better. And as I play more on stage, it does get better. So I just wanted to give words of encouragement for those who are working through this. It is possible, and you can do it. You can do this. I remember I was looking at maybe it was about 6-7 years ago. Somebody came to me for lessons, and I was looking at their right arm when they were playing rhythm, and everything was really stiff and tight, and they were from their elbow, hinging from their elbow, like this, and I said, okay, let me just grab your right arm, and I want you to do this. And I talked about that you want to break in your wrist, you want everything to be kind of loose and flexible, and I videotaped him, and he was able to do this, and it looked really good. And I said, okay, so when you practice, I don't want you to practice yet. All I want you to do is watch this video of yourself playing this new way. Now, I would say while I made that video of him practicing that way, it was very uncomfortable for him. Okay, it was not at all natural, because he hadn't programmed that into muscle memory yet, and so my recommendation to him was, okay, do nothing but watch this video, and then for at least one or at least a couple days. Don't even pick up the car. Just watch that video. Then before you pick up the car, watch the video, and then get in front of a mirror and to try to recreate what's on that video and do nothing but that. Because what you don't want to do is reinforce, old habits again. You really want to try to develop that new habit, and it's very difficult to do that if the old is constantly saying, pick me, pick me. So, and I would say, unfortunately for this particular person, he just didn't stick with it. And but I would say, though, if this is something that you want to do, if you want to change what it is you're doing, that's the first step. Again, self-awareness. I want to change what it is that I'm doing. The next thing, of course, is recognizing what it is you want to change, and then just encourage you to just stick to it and give it a year, give it 2 years, give it 3 or 4 years. I would say this. I always tell people, well, I tell you what, if you don't practice, if you don't work on something, then it's guaranteed. The outcome is guaranteed. However, if you do work on it, if you keep practicing, there's a chance. There's a chance that you will get better, and the only way you're going to do that is if you work on it. So, anyway, I hope this this video gives people some words of encouragement to try new things and to work on that muscle memory. Okay.